Lieutenant Hyan-Su stood silently at the edge of the border, his eyes scanning the frozen terrain beyond the barbed wire. The moonlight glinted off the snow, painting the harsh landscape in shades of silver and shadow. Every sound, the crunch of footsteps, the distant bark of a dog, the whisper of wind felt amplified in the stillness. As a Korean soldier, obedience had been his life, a constant drilled into him since childhood. Every day he enforced rules without question. Every glance, every gesture monitored, every life he touched weighed against his loyalty to the regime. But tonight was different. From a distance, he noticed a family moving cautiously along a hidden path, a father carrying a child on his back, a mother clutching the hand of a smaller child. Their eyes darted constantly, terror etched on every face. Hyan-Su's heart clenched. He had seen countless families like this, snatched, beaten, or vanished, because they dared to dream of freedom. And yet watching them now, a warmth he hadn't felt in years stirred inside him. Duty screamed at him. Reporting them could mean swift punishment for their crime and a reward for his loyalty. But another voice, smaller, quieter, asked a question he had never dared to speak. What is justice if it kills compassion? Hyan-Su's gloved hands tightened on his rifle. The wind bit at his cheeks, but the chill inside him was colder. Every instinct demanded obedience, yet he couldn't turn away. He thought of his younger sister growing up hungry, the way he had once hidden scraps of rice to protect her. The memory hit like a hammer. He had seen the cost of silence, the cost of blind loyalty. The family froze under the shadow of the trees, unaware of the soldier watching them, calculating every step. Hyan-Su's pulse raced. The night was quiet, almost unbearably so, but the tension was deafening. He knew one wrong move could ruin everything, not just their lives, but his own. Yet something deep in him whispered that mercy might be stronger than fear. And in that frozen borderland, where law and humanity collided, Lieutenant Hyan-Su faced a choice that could change everything: follow orders or follow his heart. Minjin clutched little Hannah's hand so tightly that her tiny fingers turned white. His older brother, Jae-ho, carried their younger sister Su-min on his back, each step crunching softly over the frost-hardened ground. Their breaths formed clouds in the freezing night, hearts pounding with fear and hope intertwined. Every shadow seemed alive. Trees became soldiers. Wind became whispers of danger. They had been planning this escape for weeks. The village had grown colder each day, not just from winter's bite, but from the cruelty of Korean soldiers patrolling every corner, checking identities, confiscating food, punishing even the smallest misstep. Their father had warned them of what happened to neighbors who were caught, vanished without a trace, whispered about only in fearful hushes. But hunger had sharpened resolve. Desperation had lit courage. As they neared the narrow opening in the fence, Minchin's stomach twisted. Beyond that barrier lay the river, a frozen, unforgiving expanse that promised freedom but demanded courage. Crossing it at night meant avoiding guards, dogs, and watchtowers. One slip could be fatal. Still, he tightened his grip on Hannah, whispering, "We'll make it, little one, just a little farther." Behind them, the soft crunch of snow made him freeze. Minjin glanced back and saw the faint outline of Lieutenant Hyan-Su, the Korean soldier who had been stationed near the fence. Their eyes met briefly, and something passed between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the danger, and perhaps a silent promise. Each step forward was a battle against fear. The wind cut through layers of clothing. The icy river mocked them with its distance. Su-min whimpered softly, her head pressing against Jae-ho's shoulder. Min-chun's heart clenched. He thought of their mother, long gone, leaving them with lessons of survival and whispers of hope. As they approached the final stretch of the fence, Minjin noticed a shadow shifting near the riverbank. His pulse raced. Was it another Korean soldier? A watchtower scanning the night? Every instinct screamed to stop, to hide, to retreat, but turning back was no longer an option. Ahead lay freedom, danger, and a choice that would define them forever. The family stepped into the darkness, hearts thundering, clinging to each other in the fragile hope that courage and love might be enough to survive the night. The river stretched before them, a vast sheet of ice glinting faintly under the pale moonlight. Minjin swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his siblings in his arms and the burden of their entire escape on his shoulders. Each step onto the frozen surface was a gamble. The ice groaned ominously beneath their combined weight. A single crack could mean disaster. Hannah clutched his coat, shivering violently. "Are we safe now?" she whispered, voice trembling. Minji enforced a reassuring smile, though fear gripped his chest. "Almost," he said. "Just a little more. We'll be free soon." Jeho moved carefully, guiding Sumin along, eyes constantly scanning the darkness for any signs of the Korean soldiers or their patrolling dogs. The wind carried distant echoes of barking, each one sending jolts of panic through their bodies. Minjan focused on the sound of their breaths, the rhythm of their steps, trying to drown out the world of terror around them. Halfway across, a distant shimmer caught Minjan's eye flashlight sweeping the riverbanks. Korean soldiers. His heart lurched. They froze, huddled together, the cold biting at their exposed skin. Minchen's mind raced. If discovered now, all would be lost. Yet retreat was impossible. The river behind them threatened to swallow them in its icy embrace. He whispered instructions, moving cautiously, each step calculated. The ice cracked faintly, sending chills down their spines. Hannah whimpered, but Minjun kept her close, murmuring comforting words. Jeho encouraged Sumin, sharing stories of warmer days, of a life beyond the fence, to distract her from the immediate peril. The shadows of Korean soldiers grew nearer, their shouts muffled but unmistakable. Panic threatened to overwhelm Minjan, but he remembered his mother's lessons. Courage is small steps forward in the face of fear. Clinging to that thought, he pressed on. Finally, they reached the riverbank on the other side, the frost-stiffened grass scraping their frozen clothes. Exhausted but alive, they collapsed into each other's arms. The immediate danger was not yet gone, but for the first time in weeks, their hearts felt a glimmer of hope. For Minjin, Jeho, and their little sisters, the frozen river was no longer a threat. It was a bridge to freedom, testament to their courage, and the beginning of a journey that might, just might, bring them to safety. The family huddled together on the far side of the river, the icy wind cutting through their thin clothes. Minchen's legs ached, each step feeling heavier than the last, but relief and fear battled inside him. They were free from the immediate reach of the Korean soldiers, yet the unknown stretched ahead like a shadowy chasm. Jeho scanned the terrain, a stretch of dark forest just beyond the riverbank. He whispered, "We move quietly. No lights, no sound. Keep close." Sumin clutched his arm, trembling, while Hannah clung to Minjun, burying her face against his coat. The siblings had survived the ice, but survival meant more than crossing the river. It meant navigating a land they did not know, where dangers lurked in every shadow. They stumbled through the forest, each crackling branch underfoot a potential signal to any patrolling Korean soldiers. The cold was merciless, biting fingers and cheeks, and hunger gnawed at their bellies. Minjen thought of the meager meals they had left behind, of the neighbors who whispered about those who had been caught trying to escape, and he felt a sharp pang of guilt for dragging his siblings into this peril. Hours passed, measured by the shifting moonlight and the sounds of distant wildlife. Minjan led them with a mixture of caution and hope, remembering every story of escape he had overheard. Somewhere ahead, he believed, there might be people willing to help, places to rest, food to eat, but each step demanded vigilance. One mistake could lead to capture, or worse. A sudden rustle made them freeze. Shadows shifted, and Minchen's pulse thundered. He whispered for silence, drawing his siblings into a tight circle. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the danger would find them again, but the movement was only a deer. A fleeting reminder that life still existed beyond the tyranny they had fled. Minjon exhaled slowly, feeling the first flicker of hope in weeks. The journey was far from over, but the forest, once terrifying, now seemed like a protective cloak. For the first time, the possibility of survival felt tangible, not guaranteed, but possible. And in that fragile hope, the family found strength to continue, step by cautious step, into the uncertain night. The forest seemed endless, shadows twisting like ghosts around them. Hunger clawed at their stomachs, cold numbed their fingers, and fatigue weighed heavily on every limb. Minchen's eyes scanned constantly for movement, his mind racing through every possible danger. Then, a faint light flickered ahead, a lantern swaying gently held by a lone figure. Jeho froze. "Minjun, do we trust them?" he whispered, voice barely audible. The figure stepped closer, revealing a woman with a shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, eyes cautious, but not hostile. Minchin's heart pounded. A new stranger could be a trap, yet any stranger could also mean help. The woman spoke softly, her voice carrying warmth in the cold night. "You don't belong here," she said. "Follow me. There is a safe place nearby." Minjun hesitated, glancing at his siblings. Hannah's eyes were wide with curiosity, Sumin clinging to Jaeho's leg. The decision weighed on him. A wrong choice could cost them their lives. After a tense moment, he nodded, motioning for the others to follow. They crept silently behind her, careful not to make a sound that might attract attention. The woman led them to a small, hidden cabin, camouflaged among dense trees. Inside, the warmth of a fire welcomed them, and the smell of dried food made their mouths water. They ate in silence, the family clinging to each other as hope seeped back into their hearts. The woman explained that she occasionally helped people who had escaped the regime's smugglers, traitors, and families like theirs. Her voice was cautious, but there was a quiet strength behind it. Minjan realized that trust, fragile as it was, might be the only way forward. For the first time since leaving home, the siblings felt a flicker of safety, yet Minjan knew their journey was far from over. The Korean soldiers could still be tracking them, and beyond the forest lay more unknowns. Rivers, checkpoints, and towns where betrayal lurked in every shadow. That night, huddled by the fire, Minjun made a silent vow. They would survive, no matter the cost. The stranger had shown them a glimpse of kindness in a cruel world, but the real test of freedom was only just beginning. Morning light filtered through the cracks in the cabin, revealing frost on the edges of the window. The family had slept poorly, every creak of the wooden floor reminding them of the Korean soldiers they had narrowly evaded. Minchan's mind raced with plans how to move forward without attracting attention. The woman who had helped them, quietly named Sucha, spoke first. "The forest will not hide you forever. There's a river ahead, a natural border. Cross carefully and you may reach help on the other side. But be warned, Korean soldiers patrol near the banks. They do not hesitate." Minjan nodded, steeling himself. He had led his siblings through the ice and shadows, survived hunger, and evaded capture, but crossing the river felt like the ultimate test. Every step forward was both freedom and danger. Hannah and Suman followed closely, their small hands gripping as tightly, trusting him utterly. As they approached the river, the water glistened under the weak morning sun, partially frozen at the edges. The current was swift, and Minjan assessed the best path, avoiding visible patrol routes. He whispered instructions, his voice low but steady, encouraging calm. Every snap of a twig or distant shout made them flinch. Halfway across, the river bit at their legs. Ice scraped their skin, numbing muscles already fatigued from days of running. A sudden bark echoed from the far bank. Minjan froze. A dog, trained by Korean soldiers, was patrolling. Heart hammering, he pulled his siblings close and signaled them to stay low. The dog sniffed the air, then barked again. Minjan held his breath, willing the moment to pass. Miraculously, the dog turned its attention elsewhere, chasing a bird, and they slipped past undetected. On the other side, a small village appeared, seemingly untouched by the regime's patrols. Jun allowed himself a brief smile, a tiny spark of relief. Though the river was behind them, Minjan knew the path ahead held even greater challenges: finding shelter, avoiding informants, and securing food. But for the first time, the family felt a fragile taste of freedom, a hope that maybe survival wasn't just a dream. Step by careful step, they moved forward, hearts intertwined in determination and love. The village was small, its streets quiet, under the early morning haze. Minjun led his siblings cautiously, every shadow a potential threat. Korean soldiers could be anywhere, and a single wrong word might betray them. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, and fatigue made every step feel heavier than the last. They found a small house at the village's edge. An elderly man, with wary eyes and weathered hands, watched them approach. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low but firm. Minjan bowed slightly, explaining they were fleeing from the regime, seeking only shelter and safety. The man studied them, suspicion flickering across his face. "You can stay for a night," he said finally, "but help comes at a cost." Minjun hesitated. Every encounter in North Korea carried risk, yet they had no choice. The man led them inside, offering a simple meal of rice and dried fish. Hannah and Sumin's eyes lit up, and for a moment, the fear melted away. As night fell, Minjun learned the cost, in exchange for shelter. The man wanted information, anything he could pass to Korean soldiers to gain favor. Minchun's heart sank. Trust was a currency he could barely afford, yet he needed allies. He faced a moral dilemma: betray others for survival, or risk the lives of his siblings by staying silent. He decided to protect his family. Carefully, he spoke in vague terms, providing nothing concrete while maintaining the appearance of cooperation. The man seemed satisfied, but the tension was palpable. Every creak of the wooden floor felt like a signal, every shadow like a warning. By morning, Minjun knew the choice had been the right one. They left the village before the sun rose, carrying the taste of a brief comfort and the bitter reminder that trust in this world was fragile. Survival demanded more than courage. It required cunning, patience, and sometimes painful deception. Stepping back into the cold, Minjun held his siblings' hands tightly. Ahead lay forests, roads, and more strangers, some who would help, some who would betray. But for the first time, he felt a cautious confidence. As long as he stayed vigilant and protected his family, they still had a chance at freedom. The forest thinned as they neared a road, and in the distance, the unmistakable glint of a checkpoint appeared. Korean soldiers patrolled the area, their rifles catching the pale sunlight. Minchun's heart pounded. One wrong move could undo all their progress. He signaled Hannah and Sumin to crouch low, keeping close to the trees. Every step was calculated, every rustle of leaves measured. The family moved silently, the tension so thick it seemed to cling to their skin. Minchun's mind raced with options. Wait until nightfall. Attempt to distract the guards, or find a hidden path along the river. Time was against them. Hunger and cold made pausing almost impossible. A sudden whistle from the checkpoint froze them in place. A lone Korean soldier stepped toward the forest edge, scanning the underbrush. Minjun pressed his siblings against him, whispering reassurances that he barely felt. The soldier's eyes narrowed, but after a long moment, he turned back toward his comrades. Minjun exhaled slowly, relief flooding his body. They edged closer, moving like shadows. Minjun spotted a small gap between the trees that would allow them to slip past unnoticed. Heart-hammering, he led his siblings through it, praying the patrols remained unaware. The sound of their footsteps was nearly drowned out by the wind rustling through the leaves. Finally, they reached the far side of the checkpoint. Minjun allowed himself a brief smile, relief mixed with exhaustion. The river they had crossed, the village they had navigated, and now the checkpoint. Each step had been a test of courage, patience, and cunning. Though freedom still lay ahead, the family felt the faint glow of hope. They knew the path was far from safe, but every moment they survived together reinforced their bond. Minjun squeezed his siblings' hands, silently vowing to protect them no matter the cost. Ahead, the world beyond North Korea beckoned uncertain, dangerous, but alive with the promise of survival and a chance at the life they had only dreamed of. The distant line of the border loomed like a fragile promise. Minchun's legs burned with exhaustion, but he forced himself forward, driven by the thought of freedom for Hannah and Sumin. The forest opened to a narrow field, and beyond it, the glimmer of the river that marked the edge of North Korea stretched under the dim light of dawn. Every step was a test. Korean soldiers patrolled the area with trained precision, their boots crunching on gravel. Minjun paused behind a bush, heart pounding, and counted the soldiers' movements. Timing was everything. One misstep could bring them back into captivity, or worse. He whispered instructions to his siblings, guiding them through the safest path. Suddenly, a dog barked in the distance. Minjun froze. The sound echoed, and he felt the soldier's attention shift. Panic surged through him, but he forced calm, grabbed Hannah and Sumin, urging them to run low and fast. Shadows from the trees stretched long, hiding their movements, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, the patrols seemed confused. Reaching the riverbank, Minjun saw the narrow crossing point. The current was strong, icy, and unforgiving. He steadied his siblings, holding their hands tightly. Together, he whispered. They stepped into the water, the cold biting, the river threatening to pull them under, but the thought of the world beyond gave them strength. Halfway across, a shout rang out from the far side. A Korean soldier had spotted them, but Minjan pressed forward, instinct and desperation guiding each stroke. Finally, they reached the opposite bank, collapsing onto the muddy shore, shivering and gasping. For the first time in years, the threat of the regime felt distant. They lay there, drenched, exhausted, but alive. Minjun held his siblings close, a silent vow of protection burning stronger than ever. The forest behind them marked the horrors of their past. The river before them symbolized a new life. Freedom was not a distant dream anymore. It was real, fragile, and entirely theirs. The first light of morning painted the horizon in soft gold as Minjun and his siblings stood on the far side of the river. Every muscle ached, and their bodies shivered from cold and exhaustion, but a sense of liberation coursed through them stronger than anything they had ever known. For the first time, they could breathe without fear of Korean soldiers lurking in the shadows. Minjun looked at Hannah and Suman, their faces pale but alive, and felt a wave of gratitude and relief. The years of hunger, fear, and relentless surveillance seemed to melt away with the rising sun. He whispered a promise to them. "We will never let anyone take this from us again." The surrounding land was unfamiliar, but it felt like possibility itself. A distant village appeared over the hill, its smoke curling gently into the sky. Minjan knew they would have to tread carefully, but for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. Survival had brought them this far, and now hope was tangible. As they approached the village, friendly faces emerged, people who understood fear, loss, and the quiet courage needed to escape. Minjan exchanged cautious greetings and found that trust, though fragile, could be rebuilt. The siblings received food, warmth, and shelter, simple gifts that in North Korea had once been denied. Standing together, Minjan realized that freedom was more than a physical escape, was the ability to choose. To love, to protect, and to live without constant fear. The river behind them was a symbol of the life they had left, and the road ahead shimmered with new beginnings. As the sun climbed higher, Minjun held Hannah and Sumin close, feeling a joy he had never thought possible. The journey had been brutal, the odds nearly insurmountable. But hope had guided them through every shadowed forest, every patrolled checkpoint, and every icy river. For the first time, the boy and his siblings were truly free. And in that freedom, they found not only safety, but the chance to dream, to rebuild, and to live fully together without fear in a world that finally belonged to them.